Good evening again. Sunday evening and time to review last week and try to look ahead. And once again, we have a really good discussion board going. You guys have proven to be the master of discussion, and there's some really interesting things in there this week as we talked about two very important things in the concepts of quality, which is measurements and metrics and what good are measurements? How do we use them? How do we determine what they are? How do we know what's good for us? How do we, it's really how do we know where we are? And a comment I think I mentioned that I've made dozens of times in my career is there's an old saying that says if it's not measured, it's not managed, or if it's not measured, it's not done. And in many ways, that's true. I look at even things on a little bit of a mundane educational way. The quickest way for somebody not to do something, particularly in an undergraduate class on campus, is to say that it's not mandatory, or I'm not going to grade this. Well, how many people actually do it then, or actually do it well when that happens? A lot of things like that are at play when we look at measurements in the world of quality. Why do we measure something? What's it used for? And that's why I asked one of the questions the way I did you ever have anything where you seemed to be measuring something that it was useless, and that you really didn't know what happened to the information after you collected it? You collect the information just because you can. So I think it's been a very interesting discussion. We saw everything from some pretty standard stuff about, a popular term out there right now is KPIs, key performance indicators, and that gets used differently in different businesses. We had a discussion of how do you measure things in an industry like thoroughbred raising, in the racehorse industry. That was a really interesting discussion, and a lot of people picked up on that. And then just some mention of even personal measurements. Do we measure personal things in our lives? And yeah, the answer is we do all the time. But what are we doing it for? Well, in most cases, it is to see whether we have achieved a desired result. And that's what most measurement and metrics is used for. So I just thought that was a very, very important concept, and that's why we spent most of the unit on it. And the key is, what do you do with the measurement? And that really leads into what one of this week's topics is, and that is learning. Personal learning and organizational learning. How do we learn as individuals? And do our organizations, A, encourage learning, and B, act as what's known a learning organization? Baldrige, the whole principles are built around learning in a very large way, aren't they? Because if you don't learn from what you've done, how do you make improvements? It's very, very integral to the whole Baldrige process. So this week, excuse me, we're going to ask you to look at learning systems. How do you learn? How has education changed? There's a video that I've included that is a favorite of mine, and it's by one of the more prominent current thinkers on education and learning, Sir Ken Robinson. Very interesting thing about how has the education system changed, or how must it change? Because there's an awful lot going on in the world every day, and we've lived through a period of more change in the past, say, 50 years than occurred in the 250 years before that. So just the speed at which things change requires a difference in the speed and the method and the way in which we learn. Very important to Baldrige. Are we learning? Are we learning individuals? Are we learning organizations? The second thing I wanted to spend our time on this week, and now you can see we're kind of looping back to where we were a couple weeks ago. Does your organization value its employees? That is a very, very important question. And it is called out specifically in the Baldrige Principles that an organization needs to value its employees. Well, let's look back at the discussion we had week before last. when we talked about internal and external customers. And I want you to kind of keep that concept in mind as you look at the issue of employers valuing their employees. You know, so many times we see businesses that tell us in their mission statements and things like that, that our employees are our most important asset and we value our employees above everything else. And then 10 minutes later, we read and notice that that organization has laid off 20% of its workforce. Well, how much did they value those employees? Or did they value them up to the point where they stopped producing value? Is there a difference in the way I'm using the words value and value? Okay? Do they mean the same? Same spelling, probably same dictionary definition, but in a quality context, where's it coming from? So that's where we are. I also wanted to mention something very, very important to me. And that's just, I'm really apologetic about taking so long to get grades and comments to you this week. But what's going on is, in fact, starting this evening with a dinner and through the next 2.5 days, a team from the New England Association of Colleges and, it's NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges. That's our accrediting body. That's the regional accreditation. That's the important one. That's what makes us real. Okay? It's the same accrediting body that accredits the Ivy League schools and every other college in New England. And they are here at Post for our 10-year reaccreditation visit. And as part of that visit, we spent the last year and a half developing a self-study of what the university is doing, where we've come in the last 10 years, where we're going, what we're all about. And in a week or so, we're going to see how Baldrige requires self-examination and self-study is a big part of the Baldrige process. That's taken up so much of people's time as we put on the finishing touches and get ready for that visit. It delayed me. It shouldn't have. You have my apologies, okay? So in some cases, maybe the feedback last week was not quite as extensive as it has been. But I also hope that you've seen enough from me over the first half of the course that you can kind of interpret what a certain number means. What does that measurement mean? Does it mean the same it meant 2 weeks ago? A way to kind of interpret and do some things in the measurement process. Okay, so again, sorry for taking so long to get back, but everything is up to date right now, and we'll move right ahead. So you're going to see 2 discussion questions this week. One about learning organizations, one about valuing employees. They're extremely important concepts. I'm looking forward to your answers because I have yet to be disappointed by the quality of a discussion in this group. Okay, so if there are any questions, please get to me, and I thank you very much for everything.